Hey everyone, how's it going? I'm the Timicer and welcome back to Let's Play City Skylines in Dunswell. In this episode, if you haven't guessed by the title, we are going to be building the city's main power generating station in Industrial Island. So of course this is going to be a nuclear power plant, and as I figure out how I am going to place these power plants, I'm going to explain a little bit what's going to happen. So about half of this episode, I'd say, will be in time-lapse mode, as you know, I'm just struggling here figuring out where I'm placing down buildings. I like to show you guys the process of that, because a lot of these videos I don't rehearse prior to doing them. I just kind of figure out everything on the fly. So I guess the first half of this video will be comprised of this style of time-lapse video, and then we'll get into a little bit of live play later on in the episode as I reconfigure some of the highway network that comes into Industrial Island. So I'm going to revamp the roundabout that's just around the corner, and I'm going to work on a few side projects here. But the main focus of this episode and what we're doing right now is the power generating station. And as you can see, it's on the easternmost tip of the island, and this is because nuclear power stations are always close to water. They need water to be able to operate. They suck water in and they use it for cooling the nuclear cores. There's various types of nuclear cores, or I guess nuclear plants in the world. Some of them use fresh water directly from a water source. Others use, they just recirculate the same water over and over again. But yeah, nuclear power is a topic that I find very intriguing. And I always have ever since I was a kid. So if you guys want to check out a really cool series on HBO, I highly suggest you check out the Chernobyl series. It gives a really good explanation of what happened back in the Soviet days. And if you're interested in anything Soviet, I highly suggest that you go check out my Chenovstock series. It's a Soviet series. It's a city that was kind of built from the ground up back in the 60s and 70s. And I kind of just built the city around that. And, everything was kind of in a Soviet, postmodern, Russian city. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Now back to what's going on in the game. As you can see, I placed down 2 generating stations, and this is just to set us up for the future. So there will be a time in the future when we're going to need a ton of power. Once we start to hit, 100,000 people, 120,000 people, we're going to need a lot more power, and I just don't want to start plopping down nuclear power plants all over the map. So I decided to plop 2 of them side by side. It just helps to make this whole nuclear power station look more grand and look more epic. They are super expensive, but I'm going to turn one of them off for the time being because just one nuclear power plant delivers enough power we have so much extra power production, it's crazy. I could destroy all of the other power plants in the city, and just the one nuclear power plant would be able to deliver power to the entire city, like times 2. So one of them is going to be off for now, but we'll eventually have to turn it back on, and at that point, well, everything will already be in place. And if you look closely, you'll see that I plopped down a very long and large building, and this is a sneaker factory. And the reason why I placed this down is, again, it kind of makes the nuclear power plant look more grand and more epic. But the theme of it, just the way it looks, blends in really well with the nuclear power plant. It kind of has the same theme. So I just thought it would look cool. And it's not like a super high production factory as well. I don't think it's going to generate a ton of traffic issues in the area. I will place down a couple of storage buildings around it just to help out with, storing the produced goods and all that. But yeah, I mean, it's a really cool setup. I really like how this turns out. And of course, I guess the power connectors, or whatever you would call that, what basically takes the power from the power plant and then converts it into into power lines, as you're seeing me do right now. I guess that would be called like a transformer, maybe? Anyway, I'm not really sure what it's called, but what I used for those is oh my god, I can't even speak today, guys. I used the geothermal power plant. So again, that's even generating a little bit more power. But I am going to keep those buildings on. You know, they're fairly cheap. They don't pollute any or anything like that, so it's all good. And of course, for the sake of realism, it's not really necessary, but I'm just going to run a whole bunch of power lines out and into the city. Some of these power lines are just kind of branch off into different parts of the city, but you know, again, just so things look realistic, you know, you need a whole bunch of power lines just heading right out of the nuclear power plant. And of course, I placed down this canal here. Of course, you need some sort of water source, and a lot of nuclear power plants around the world tend to have an artificial canal that kind of wraps around the plant. And just to give you guys an idea, I used a nuclear power plant that's out in Ontario, Canada. There's a couple of power plants along the shores of Lake Ontario, and I used that for inspiration with this nuclear power plant. And this rail line that you see going past the nuclear power plant, I don't know if I'm properly setting this up, but my intentions were to run this line over to the ore processing facility that we're eventually going to get to. But looking back on it, I'm not sure this was the best idea, because this line is also servicing, I guess, the port area for the oil production facility. So as you know, like last episode, we placed down the rail/boat hub, and that seems to be fairly busy. There's always a ton of trucks delivering some oil, and then there's boats and trains constantly leaving that area. So having two major like train hubs on the same line is maybe going to cause some problems in the future. I may have to reconfigure this at some point, but I'd just like there to be rail going over to the ore processing facility once we get into that. And of course, as you guys all know, as soon as you modify a shoreline in City Skylines, once you hit the play button, there is a lot of flooding. Now, in this case, it was kind of a little bit more cumbersome than it usually is, just because of this rail line that I placed before modifying the shoreline and hitting play. I maybe should have done this afterwards, because as you can see, this sunken rail is all flooded now and the water just can't go anywhere. So luckily, I had the bright idea of using Move It. Here, you'll just see in a second. But what I do is I select all of the nodes of the rail line using Move It, and then I just raise them up to ground level again, so then all the water drips away, and then I just lower everything back down and it's all dry. Now, all of this flooding got me thinking, why not place one of these water, what's it called? Like a water pump, I suppose, a pumping station. I forget what the exact name is. But yeah, it just fits really well into this area. And with that, I tried to put down these water tanks, but I didn't really think it looked that great. So I ended up removing those. And yeah, here is what I was talking about. So I just raise everything here, and as you can see, the water just sloshes away, and then I do Control Z, which is undo, and then boop, everything just drops back down to ground level, or I guess to sunken level. But again, yeah, this pumping station looks really good. It fits into the nuclear power plant build, because in larger nuclear power plants, you usually see a series of buildings that are around them. In this case, I didn't go too crazy. I just plopped a few, but it ends up looking really great. And don't worry, guys. I know you may not have gotten the chance to get a good glimpse of the power plant, but I will include some cinematics towards the end of this episode. Now, what I want to showcase now is the preparation for the ore processing facility that we're eventually going to get into. And I know... So last episode, I mentioned that I was going to flatten out this entire area and build a giant quarry. Now, a lot of you weren't upset with me, but a lot of you were discouraging me from doing that because it would make the surrounding area look kind of weird. And come to think of it, I agree now. I agree exactly what you guys are saying. It would kind of ruin the geography. It wouldn't make much sense because you have this mountain range that's just off to the side here, and then all of a sudden, boom, you just have a big flat island. It would have looked kind of weird. So what I kind of thought, what I thought of doing in this case was kind of setting myself up with the best of both worlds. Oh my god, I can't speak today. And what I've done is I've flattened out a large portion of the mountain range, but I kept a big chunk of it. So it looks like it's part of the mountain chain, and then it just kind of fades into this big quarry. So this would have been dug out artificially, and yeah, I mean, it ends up looking really cool, I find. So right now I'm not gonna get into this area just yet, because as you can see in my demand meter, industrial demand is super low right now just because we have an excess of industrial buildings, and I don't want to place too many industrial buildings because of course you end up suffering from abandonment issues and all that kind of stuff. So for the time being, I'm gonna focus on other things, but I just wanted to take some time to get myself set up for when we do want to get into the quarry. So the terrain might change in the future because I still don't know how big the buildings are and how they're going to fit with the terrain. So we'll get into that at some point. And now I'm just adding a few final touches to the power plant, and we'll move on to other things. Now, the other portion of this episode, I want to focus on traffic management. So around the oil refinery, traffic is an absolute nightmare. There's just constantly trucks coming and going, and it's clogging everything up. And the main reason for that somebody pointed out in the last episode in the comments, was that all of my storage buildings were set to balanced. And what that does is it keeps the buildings sort of half full. So as the refinery or whatever else demands oil, trucks will spawn and they'll bring that oil to those processing facilities. Meanwhile, because those storage facilities are now a bit emptier, more trucks will spawn and rush over to those storage facilities to try to fill them up again. So there's just constantly trucks coming and going. As you can see on my screen right now, it's just too many trucks. Now, by setting these storage buildings to fill, what's going to happen is there's going to be a huge rush of traffic in the beginning to fill the storage facilities, but they're always going to be full. And the excess oil that's being produced will then go to the refineries and whatever other processing building that needs them. So if ever we run into a situation where we're no longer producing enough oil, or we're no longer producing any oil at all, well, then we can set those storage buildings to balanced or to empty, and then trucks will then transport those goods over to the refinement buildings. So this will greatly help out with traffic. Another thing that I want to take care of is the roundabout that we have going on here. So this is an absolute nightmare. I didn't really plan this well. I didn't really plan it at all. I kind of based this roundabout off of the roundabout that was present in the beginning of this series. So there was multiple nodes that were connecting to each other, and it was just really not optimal. So what I've done is I've kind of listened to your guys' advice, and I checked out a few of Biffa's videos and tutorials that he made on creating roundabouts. And, you know, a couple of other creators too had some really great insight into creating super efficient roundabouts. So I'm going to create an efficient roundabout, and I can tell you right off the bat, it may not look too intricate or amazing or anything like that, but it does function quite well in the end. Another really impressive thing that I learned after watching various tutorials and such is that using the Traffic Manager President Edition mod, there's actually a setting in there to properly configure your roundabouts. So once you have all the roads laid out, you can just go into the mod, and there's an option in there to set the proper settings for a roundabout. Just like you see me do, it sets all the merges and all the lane configurations to optimize your traffic circle to the fullest. And of course, what helps as well is setting some speed limits. I find that setting a lower speed limit is not is not only good for realism, like you don't want to fly through a roundabout like this at 100 miles an hour. It also improves traffic greatly. So as soon as I hit play here, you can see that everything is running super smooth. And I end up doing some small little adjustments here and there, you know, taking out little bits of road and stuff just to not clog everything up as much. But as you can see, like this was gridlock, literal, like nothing was moving here before. And with these small optimizations that I've made, traffic is just free flowing through this interchange. It's fantastic. So that'll set us up for the future, and we'll be all set to go. All right, well, at this point, we have our nuclear power plant, which is complete, and I revamped our roundabout heading into our industrial zone. Now, we're facing a lot of abandonment in this area, and that is due to our industrial demand being super low and there not being enough people to fill all of these jobs. So right now, I'm not going to head any further into this industrial zone. As you can see, I got the quarry ready. I'm not sure when we're going to get to this, but we'll get to it eventually. Now, before focusing on increasing our population, I might as well take the time to create our port area in the industrial zone, as this won't really have an effect on the abandonment situation. It's just going to set us up for the future, and you know, we'll be all set once we start to, you know, construct more industries in this area. I may demolish a lot of what you see here, all of this generic industry, and replace it eventually with factories, because we don't have all of the factories unlocked yet, but we have enough of them to where, you know, we can certainly cram a few in here. As you can see, some of the factories are quite large, and we're gonna need enough room to fit all of these. So without further ado, let's get into the industrial port. I know over in this corner, you know, we already placed down the first hub of the city. I was kind of expecting this to be the very first location for there to be a hub, but that wasn't the case. But no big deal. So how am I gonna get set up here? Because we're gonna have to bring the train over to this spot, and maybe just to make this look cool, I'm wondering if we should have like 2 hubs. Maybe just one, I don't know. Here, let's try to figure this out. Because if I have 2 hubs, then I gotta set them up in a way, I gotta set them up like parallel to one another. So luckily we have Move It for that. It makes things super simple. So let's just have them side by side like this. I don't think I want to have them like completely smushed together. Well, maybe it'll work. But actually, maybe before doing that, I should connect up these 2 nodes. I have no idea how this is going to react, but we'll just check it out anyways. So connect these 2 rail connections, and then this. And then smush them together. You know what? It might not be that bad after all. I think that'll work. Now we'll just have to adjust the height of these 2. So using Move It, super simple. We just go to Object Height and then select whichever one we want. And then we can just move them to be all lined up, just like so. Maybe I should have built this in elevated mode just because it's screwing up the terrain. Bam, there we go. Wow, that actually looks really cool. And I'm thinking this is going to be a good thing. Now, it might be a little bit of a fustercluck for the trains. I don't know how this is going to react, but the idea behind having 2 of these ports is it's going to offload, it'll kind of offload onto both of them, so we just won't have like everything conglomerating. What I mean is, like, we don't have... So the idea behind having 2 of these hubs is they'll kind of offload off of each other, so we won't have like all the traffic just converging onto one. Hopefully the AI is going to be smart enough to kind of load balance on both of these. I have my doubts. We all know how City Skylines traffic behaves, but anyway, wishful thinking. There, so we'll have this rail line coming out over here, and then it's gonna follow the coastline. Very similar to the industrial area on the other side of town, or I guess the oil part of the city. So then we'll have this rail following the coastline. And then it'll eventually make its way over here and then connect up with this rail line. How's that? And then from here, I don't think there's anything rail related that we can do. I don't think a train station is gonna give us anything more than having 2 ports. I think I'm gonna be okay with that. Now, one thing I'm gonna have to take in consideration too is there's very limited highway access on this, well, on the island as a whole, really. The only access is from this interchange, and then there's like an off and on ramp over here. Now that's kind of an issue, or it was right here. And that's kind of a problem because you can see here all the traffic is lining up. So what I'm thinking of doing is maybe creating another super compact interchange right here that'll allow traffic to go directly to this part of the industrial zone, or more in like this side of it. So we'll try to figure that out in just a minute here. But first, let's get everything connected all up. Kind of like that. And how about we preemptively lay down some streets just to get ourselves set up for the future. Oh, I had anarchy on it, I never noticed. Oh, shoot. Just need to bring this road a bit higher. Oh, I did the same thing. Like this. And then we can connect this up again. And I'll scooch this tower over here. There, so traffic-wise, how is this going to behave? I have no clue. But like everywhere else in the city, might not be too pretty. And I think that goes for pretty much every city. It's like kind of impossible to avoid traffic in this game. You can manage it, but you can't avoid it. There, I think that's all right. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if I should lay down any streets right now. Maybe I'll just keep a couple of streets here and there, because I want to lay down some factories here pretty soon. So I'm going to hold off on laying down some streets for now. All right, so at this point, oh yeah, so this is going to need water. All right, so we have water all set up. I'm trying to think if there's anything I should do to this area. I want to avoid placing down any industrial infrastructure right now. That'll affect our demand. But I think that's going to be pretty much it for this episode anyway, until we get our population up. But yeah, power consumption is good. Power availability is like way up. We don't have to worry about that. Sewage treatment, we're gonna have to do something about that pretty soon. Could probably lay down some more advanced eco water inlets, but we're running out of room over here. I'm gonna have to do something about that eventually. Alright, so that's going to help out. That should max us out. If not, it should... Oh, wow. Okay. I was expecting it to max us out a lot more than that, but okay. Man, this is just turning into a massive water treatment area. There. Yeah, that brings us up to a pretty good spot. Oh yeah, and there's one more thing that I wanted to address, and that is garbage. So as you can see, we're not in a very good spot at this point. So our landfill usage is maxed out 100%, and our garbage processing status isn't very good either. We're in the yellow zone, so that's going to be a big problem here very shortly. The reason for that is we're just not able to keep up with the amount of garbage being produced from the city, and that's mostly due to the recent increase in population. So how do we address this problem? Well, at the end of the day, placing down a ton of incineration plants will help, as well as recycling centers. But another thing that we can do is place a waste processing complex and a waste transfer facility. Now, this is something that we've unlocked at some point, and I've never really checked up on it. So the waste transfer facility, what that does is it's basically a temporary location to store garbage. Now, this will kind of help the situation, but it's more to help out areas in the city that are very far from our garbage processing buildings. Because what's happening, if you take like this corner of town, for example, so garbage trucks have to spawn somewhere over here near our landfills or incineration plants, and they have to drive all the way across town, pick up garbage. Once they're filled up, they just drive back and dump it off at wherever they can. So it's very time consuming, not very efficient. So the way around that is to place down a waste transfer facility. So this is kind of a temporary drop-off location for garbage. So by placing one, I think over here in this industrial zone would be quite appropriate for this building because it doesn't pollute that much. It kind of says it in the description too. The building pollutes less, so it can be built closer to the city center. It only produces 10 pollution, and it fits right here. So I think this is probably the best spot for it. So what's going to happen, our trucks are going to spawn from this location, and then they're going to pick up the garbage in this corner of town. Hopefully, if the AI is smart enough. I know again, the AI tends to do weird things, like trucks may spawn from over here and then like pick up garbage over here. I don't know, but hopefully it'll help the issue. Additionally, what the waste processing complex does, it picks up garbage from the waste transfer facilities and landfills, which is a huge plus, and basically recycles the material into, well, it says here, into energy and recycled materials. So, oh, does it create power? Oh, it does, 40 megawatts, not much, but it has a waste transfer truck capacity of 15 and processing rate of 192,000 a week. So what are we doing right now? We're producing 332,000 units a week. So, wow, this is like, will this seriously help out by half? Oh, this is huge too. Here, I'm just gonna place this building here. And honestly, it probably wouldn't be a bad thing to have a waste transfer facility here either, just in case our landfills get pretty full, which they are right now. Yeah, let's do that. All right, so let's hit play. Let's let the game run its course. Now, if you check out this graph, we've effectively doubled our garbage processing capacity. So before we were at like 350,000, just above the production rate, but now we're at 600,000 units a week. So this is really great. Landfill usage has already gone down almost 5%, and our garbage processing status is still pretty high. It still could be a little higher, but I think we won't have to worry about it for quite some time. So this was a huge help. I should probably place another one of these down somewhere else in the city eventually, but for now we're gonna be good. And I think what I want to do now is build the interchange to better service this place. So first, let's go over what we have. Right now we only have an off ramp coming into this area. We don't have an on ramp at all, so that's a problem. So what we're gonna want to do, big garbage problems. What we're going to want to do is I want to have another off ramp going north, but I want to have an on ramp here going, we're going to want one going east and then west as well, like southwest. So I think like kind of in between this whole block here would be the best spot for it. So let's try to get this set up. I'm going to speed up the footage just because there's going to be a lot of like fidgeting and trying to get things to fit, because it is a super compact area. But this is the kind of stuff I like building, so yeah, I'll see you guys in another minute. All right, everyone. Well, that's going to be it for this episode. I'm actually super content with the progress we've made. It may not look like much right now, but it set us up really well for the future of Industrial Island. Now, next episode, of course, we're suffering from a ton of abandonment in the industrial sector, and that's just due to the lack of people to fill those jobs. So we have a super high residential demand. I'm gonna have to deal with that. The only problem, though, is we're kind of starting to run out of room, at least like in the southern part of the map. Or we have a ton of room over here, but I don't want to build anything there just yet. I think I have a plan for this corner of the map. So I think for next episode, I may just fill in the little land we have here with residential, and hopefully that'll bring our demand down. Or I can start to build on the other side of town over here. We have a ton of land that has yet to be developed. So anyways, we'll see how everything goes. But that's priority number one right now, is just increasing our population. And actually, let's check right here. We become a metropolis at 60,000 people, and we finally unlock an airport at that point and a new square. So maybe we can make that a goal to reach 60,000 by the end of next episode. That's a big ask. We're probably not going to make it there, but at least we can make a lot of progress to make it there. And oh my God, we're losing a ton of money. But with $3.5 million in the bank, I think we can afford a little bit of a deficit for a while. Once we increase our population, it should take care of that. So guys, that is going to be it for this episode. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a like, leave a comment, be sure to subscribe, and until the next episode, take care.